Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's security seminar from Cerias at Purdue University. Our speakers are from Microsoft this morning, or this afternoon. We have two speakers. Abhilasha Bhargav-Spangle is a partner security architect, and Sunny Ebikau is a principal program manager. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Joel. It's great to be here. And it's really, really wonderful to meet our students. As Joel mentioned, I am a very proud Purdue alum. I call it my second home, with a lot of the hallways in Cerias and meeting everyone. Was any opportunity to follow up on that would be great. I start sharing, and as I introduce myself and Sony, we can talk about the topic for today. Please let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes.
Yes, the slides look good.
Perfect. So, I'm Abhilasha, and I did my undergrad, graduate, PhD at Purdue, and it was focused on. It was like a kid in a candy store. It was focused on a lot of interesting challenges. A common thread was cybersecurity, and I can tell you after 2 decades, each day is so special and there's so much to offer and do in such an area. So today, I'm really excited to be here with you to talk about some things that are of growing importance. And I am joined here with my esteemed colleague, Sony, who would introduce himself and one liner about the topic for today. Sony? Sony, we cannot hear you.
How about now?
Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a microphone issue there, but we'll take it as it comes, right? So
let's see.
Now we can hear you. Okay.
Why don't you go ahead while we figure this out?
Sounds good. So I hope in the audience, you still have some folks who have seen the latest Avengers, but the quote comes with the idea of we as technologists have a great responsibility, because the kind of influence that we are having in the world today is more than ever before. So you might have seen some of these stats and some may be new, but there's no question that the number of users, billions of users, 5 out of 8 billion users, are on the internet, some for recreation, but more so for their day-to-day lives, their jobs, healthcare, in every possible way, understanding how do you provide the right level of security was very evident. So for example, all the reports that show up that the integral role of technology in our day-to-day resulted in most of the businesses easy, that cybersecurity and resilience is the top priority. This is preaching to the choir. This is a serious crowd. So understanding what is the kind of impact is, I think when we are in the university area, we understand as a user, right? As a user, the impact of identity theft. That was my thesis also on how do we protect the users against identity theft. It's been many years, and the problem has grown not because we didn't do anything about it. There's tremendous progress. People didn't think of multi-factor authentication early on in early 2000s, and now it is more. I hope everybody has multi-factor authentication turned on for their key services, and it's become one of those things which is taken for granted. That's a good thing. However, we have a number of technologies that are being built on identities. We tend to repeat some of those issues. So being able to see how to reduce the impact on users, it's a lot more than losing an email account. It's your whole your identity as from your physical actual identity to your pseudonym and your persona is very marked, right? Because at this point, to recover from an identity theft will require a ton of work. So the customer impact, the user impact into their livelihoods, into their families, etc., is a lot more than ever before. Next thing related, so the user impact is key. The next thing, which is also probably not news to you, but this becomes really interesting. So I hope in the Q&A section, I'll come to know about areas of research from our various students. Data is an obvious, a source of how we are going to be building a lot of the cybersecurity solutions. So cybersecurity's reliance on data is not a surprise, but how can we manage the volume of data so that security operation centers, investigations, threat hunting, and all the proactive and reactive processes related to these incidents is well taken care of. So I'm proud to be part of one of the world's largest security operations center, and seeing the day-to-day, it's actual human beings behind the scene. And what is happening is, in this data comes the nice, really interesting challenges of how we can identify and protect critical services. There was a talk from Professor Spafford, now end of 90s or early 2000s, which is super relevant even today. In the identify, protect, detect, response pillars, the response and recovery is sometimes an afterthought. People think that, hey, I've designed my most perfect solution, but one should know that it's just a matter of time that it's going to fail. And are you making your system ready to be brought up again, to be able to recover, to do the root cause analysis? And these impacts, these incidents impact users tremendously. So the speed at which we can do it greatly depends on how we are doing this data governance. How are we making sure we're collecting the right data with efficiencies? And Sonia is going to talk about a really interesting angle to it, which we haven't traditionally considered and super important in today's day and age. So investments in understanding, analyzing data is never more important. One thing which I have learned myself a lot about over the last year or so is the Security Operations Center. I wish I could actually see their faces, and I would ask to raise hand in a typical Cerias seminar. But here, it would be interesting to know how many people are familiar with the Security Operations Center. It's really interesting that it is the front doors to all the big organizations. It gets threat intelligence data from across the globe, billions of events per week. Being able to make informed decisions comes from a lot of context. That context is so critical because the same piece of data in a standalone fashion would not be actionable. But if you put it together with other threat intel, we are able to start forming investigations, being able to identify incidents, being able to create detections, queries that will look for a needle in a haystack, and that haystack is huge. The ability to take that threat intel and identifying incidents, saying, hey, something is wrong, we got to go do that. That's the second part, is the incident management. Things will happen, and it happens, and we don't want to be able to miss anything. Being able to go protect the customers we talked about. So being able to have communication. So the interdisciplinary nature of how Cerias and how Purdue programs are is extremely useful, because what it allows you to do is to take a lot of different aspects. Look at legal. You go off to CRANET and understand some of the legal aspects of it. You go off to psychology and understand what is needed to help make the, de-escalate and understand how to manage the risk. Being able to understand the technology, the network, the crypto, the different aspects of what the data breaches are all about. And then it comes down to analyzing it at different layers, top level analysis, use machine learning and automation to respond to the attacks that are well known, a lot of reuse of vulnerabilities that are being released. And then as we go to lower tiers, it requires deeper and deeper look. And these are actual human beings who are spending day and night protecting as many customers, as many users as they can to reduce that impact. How they do it is also very interesting. You may be very familiar with the MITRE attack framework as a theoretical, as a concept, which has been proven over many, many years. I think there have been multiple talks in the Cerias seminars about it by people who actually designed it. It's actually very useful. And the first thing an investigator would do is start looking. It doesn't start from left to right, really. It starts from making sure, for example, you understand which credential was accessed. Then we discover what was the blast radius, how far did this attack reach, and then go back and forth to better understand the scope of the attack and root cause it. So an investigation, the MITRE attack framework is a really good one to allow one to actually go investigate various areas. One thing that'll be good to consider in your research is also to see what are the different types of mitigation, defense in depth, like, are you only thinking of the first time exposure, don't have too many ports open, security by default. There's a really great presentation which talks about rethinking security, looking at the good known states, bad known states, and reducing the exposure to start with. Then is the initial access, like I'm sure in the security courses, you'll be learning all sorts of access control models and how we can reduce, privileged access, need to know bases, and being able to reduce the threat along those lines. The initial access is also very much related to an area which is close to heart, which is identity authentication. While you take care of the privacy of the user, how do you make sure that the initial access is easy, like you're not doing a ritual around the PC to be able to log in, but at the same time, you have some kind of non-repudiation. It doesn't allow Sony to log in as me because my credentials represent me in this vast set of services that I highly depend on. The execution is really interesting, and that's where a lot of the logging and for those who may be familiar with Log4j, logging, it's like salt in a pantry, as you might have heard. You have logging everywhere. You're logging execution, so protect the protector. If you're using logging, making sure it's logged in a secure fashion using libraries that are up to date. And this type of execution failures would be also detected as part of the investigation. What typically an attacker would do is find a vulnerability in some of this executable and have an elevation of privilege. Then we'll look at other ways to create more credentials that can give more and more access across the system. The cloud system is extremely interesting in applying the same type of framework, but in considering the entire cloud as one operating system versus separate PCs. So happy to chat with folks who want to go deeper into this as a research area. Instead of standalone system, now considering the cloud as your platform and understand what it means to protect against these types of attacks at every level. Next thing is understanding the privacy. So it goes hand in hand. I remember while looking at the authentication and some of the areas, some of the previous talks was all about strong authentication without jeopardizing the privacy. So the ability to take, now even for logging and taking a ton of data, to be able to protect, respond, recover from attacks, we always keep the privacy considerations to the top. It's baked into the design because everything in security is like a double-edged sword. So if we are collecting data with the right principles, we also need it by design to protect the privacy and not just comply with the regulations, which we should, but also take it forward, like innovate and see what are some smart ways of delivering some of this. So bottom line here is that The Security Operations Center has a lot of key operations, from collecting petabytes and petabytes of logs. It has billions of scanning happening every single day, understanding the various threat intel information coming from across the globe, correlating them, and then reporting it. There are some very interesting research areas in just visualizing this data and being able to see it in that single pane, which is really, for 15 years, I haven't seen a single thing which will give you that one single pane of glass, but we can have some really good representations that we can collectively use. The ability to not just see the information as is, but infer things, infer a trend. The knowledge base increases with the depth of understanding what the attacker is after. Being able to bring together a large number of people through ticketing, through security incident event management, the SIEM systems, which are growing more and more across the globe, correlating data from all sources and building intelligence to be able to go protect everyone. So hopefully the SOC part was interesting. That's just an intro. I can give you a bunch of really good books and references. It's not something that we traditionally focus on, but it is really, really interesting to take a look, because no matter how much we harden and protect our solutions, what we have learned is that we still have to be ready for failures, and how we respond to it, how effective we make a SOC is a very important area that needs further attention. The part that we haven't talked about at all is how we start green. And at this point, I will transition to Sony, because it's such a critical part in today's world. Please go ahead, Sony.
Okay, thank you so much. I believe you can hear me. Is that correct? Awesome. Thank you, Abhilasha. And thank you, the Purdue community. I know I didn't introduce myself earlier on when I had issues with the microphone. That has been fixed. It's part of technology. The reality is that we deal with today. So I have my attachment to Purdue by having two of my sons graduate from Purdue in the last 10 years. And I have two more that will be attending Purdue, one in 2026 and the other coming in 2030. So that tells you the decision has been made. Now, Abhilasha did a great job telling us about how data is and how important data is to our future, to our collective future. In that collective future, we must work together to defend, to protect, and to build in a very sustainable way, in a way that leads us into preserving our future into the longer future that we have, as opposed to enjoying all we can today and destroying the future that we currently have. And so again, my call today, the call that Abhilasha and I, if you put all the two presentations together, it's a call to encourage everybody to do your part, to see yourself as part of the solution, to see yourself as part of the future, building the future and creating the future that all of us will happily get to one day, and be happy that we thought about making good decisions in the past that translates into those benefits that gets us into that collective future that we all desire. So to start with, I want to focus on some of the sustainability principles. Why do we do this? Why do we have to even focus on sustainability at all? Why not just continue to build as we've always done? The other aspect I want to pivot on is looking at the environment that supports the data engine that Abhilasha talked about. How do we secure that environment? How do we secure the data centers? How do we secure the SOC environment so that this business of maintaining, preserving our security posture can be realized? So starting off, I've always, caveat on the fact that we must start green. And I think Abhilasha also referred to that earlier on. We must start green. And starting green means we must go back to the basics of responsible action. And that responsible action starts with every single one of us. Even if you're a student today, you can begin to look at yourself and say, what part do I have to play in this? Where is my place in the spectrum of work that defines a collective future for ourselves. Now, any principle that is not hinged on involving and including the community that it's been built for has failed to begin with. In which case, when we talk about starting green, we want to make sure that we understand the community that we're building for. We want to understand ourselves. We want to understand the people that we're also building for. And we also have to understand that we have a collective responsibility to build. Doing nothing is not an option. Now, there are key business investments and very huge investments in building, for example, a data center. And by data center, let me describe what that is for those who are not familiar with what a data center is. A data center is where, in today's world, where all of the collection of information comes, where the information is stored and information is shared and distributed. So it's almost like a storage house, call it that. But that means all of the information that we have, petabytes upon petabytes of information that we have, must be preserved and must be protected. As we all know, data is king, and people are out after all of the data that we have, and companies and individuals maliciously have tried to play with people's data, and the scale at which that is going also calls for a careful design of the data center environment. Now, in talking about sustainability, there are three key principles or three key points, pillars that we all always look to, and that is the people, the process, and the technology. And as we build a lot of this, in bringing in those green ideas, those green innovation, those green solutions, we must focus on conserving all of our resources. And in conserving those resources, it means we must build with the future in mind. We must build knowing that, yes, there's a landscape that we must defend, and that data center is important to me as much as it is important to the community that we support. And in starting green, it means we must start right, starting with the right approach, starting with the right people, starting with the right mindset to bring about a collective knowledge base that helps to define that future, that design, in a way that it makes sense, in a way that it is beautiful, and not only beautiful, but is sustainable. And not only that, it preserves and adds to that preservation of our collective future. Again, the core has always been one that includes all of us. One thing I want to mention in terms of sustainability with innovation is the fact that it starts with you. Don't look to the other person. It starts with you, and it starts with me in my case. And how do we make sure that we can manage this environment in a responsible fashion? If we all do our part in a way that is responsible, in a way that is sustainable, in a way that is smart, call it smart, then we can define and look forward to that future that we all want to have. Again, sustainability by itself, it's key. Also, innovation all by itself, without being responsible, it's a failure. And that is very clearly defined in all of our context here, that we must align with this focus of building with the future in mind and doing it the right way, the right and judicious way. That leads us to talking about the data center of the future. What are some of the future considerations that people have looked at or that are currently looking at? And in fact, in some cases, that future is already here. The future is with us. So you look at a traditional data center environment, there are several flavors of it, where an organization has the means to invest in a huge data center where you have racks, where you have all of your cables coming in, and you have your redundancy for that data center, and you have all of the power that comes into that center. These are key design elements that should be considered in building a data center. In this data center environment, what has always happened is people just build. And that was 10, 15 years ago when this whole drive for data, the scale of data that we deal with began. People started just building. Now, what what got us here is not enough to get us into the future. The mistakes of the past cannot be repeated to get us to that future that we desire. For that reason, we must take a step backwards and look at what we did in the past that was wrong, the things that went wrong, and how can we correct those wrongs? And how can we begin to innovate in a way that we can build a future that makes sense? So looking at the data center as an example, people came in and built. And in the next future, if everybody will continue to build in that sense, the blast radius, or look at it this way, the amount of space that will be consumed is not sustainable at all. And so you're beginning to see, it's already happening, where companies are coming together to build and align along the lines of data sharing agreements, along the lines of sharing resources. And we talked about co-location as being one of those opportunities where people, instead of replicating data centers all over the place, people are able to co-locate. We come together and we agree on all of those shared opportunities, and we build a data center together, or somebody builds and is able to lease or sublease to others. Those are great ideas that's already taking shape in our current experience. The overall goal is to build and drive towards that net zero carbon emission, meaning that building, it's not creating any carbon emission over what it's stopping. And that is a key element in design. If every data center that's built in the future tracks to that net zero carbon emission, that is a big win, not only for the owner or the investor, it is a win for the community. And how about modular and minimal footprint? Modular designs are quick to assemble. That's also taking shape within the data center environment. Today, we spread in terms of expansion along horizontal lines. People are working on the idea of a vertical expansion so as to reduce the spread on the horizontal space of land. And these ideas that have been talked about and have been worked on, and if anyone is interested, we can find those areas that are people that are doing great things as it relates to data centers and get you plugged into those conversations. But again, it comes back to the point where as a student, as a professional, you have a part to play. And this includes and involves every single one of us. And if I may add to a little bit of how this relates to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has taken a different note in terms of we have nation state becoming threat actors, taking active interest in this area. Warfare of the future has been predicted to hinge on how well you can take down the services of the other host nation. And so if you look at it in that sense, cybersecurity is a key area for consideration. Now, that is the future that we cannot run away from. In that sense, how can we build with that future in mind today? What are those actions that each of us can take to build and to take us to that desired future that we all want? Technology is built on resilience ground up. That resiliency is something that collectively we can do way more and become extremely resilient. It also involves everybody bringing your share of knowledge to the table. We're not only together, it becomes more. What may not be obvious to me is clearly obvious to Abilasha. And I can lean on her expertise, I can lean on her knowledge to bake that into the design, to build that into the architecture. Sometimes we might say the community should protect themselves. It's not just that. The communities need to work and be educated, be aware of their surrounding, be aware of what cybersecurity is, And until somebody takes this and makes this, calls this out, sometimes the communities will be faced and maybe focus on other things besides cybersecurity. We need to make sure every member of the community is aware of the dangers of cybersecurity and also the opportunities to collaborate, the opportunities to do something about it. And let's talk about those conservation principles baked into the fabric of the community. That awareness, that consciousness that says things for as simple as, and I give this example to a friend of mine, as simple as the right to repair. You have a battery. If the life of that battery can be extended to a longer period of time, can be extended, guess what? That is less, that does better for the community. That does better for the environment. That's the going green. How can we bake and build those things into the fabric of our community? What can each individual do instead of looking to the other person and say, what can you do? Or what can the government do for me? The idea is, what can I do? What is my place in this fight of creating a better future for all of us? And so we'll talk a little bit about the design thinking and the things that go into the ideas of collaboration, the idea of working together with the community to make sure that when we're building the designs and focusing on the design of the considerations that lead to a better future, what are those things that make it such that it can be repeated, that is repeatable, that is scalable? The idea then is to start with the community in mind. Then you define exactly what you're looking for. You ideate on it, you do a prototype, you test it, and then you go back and reiterate the whole process again. But the key point here is you must involve the community. You must understand the people that you're building for. You must understand the audience, and you must brainstorm, include the audience in the design process, include them in the future that you're defining and designing for them. And so to do this, it's a call on all of us. One idea that we talked about in this sense also is knowing that data center design is taking a new shape in terms of service level agreements that are being put in place, where data center will now be offered as a service, meaning I build the data center, I own it, and then you come to me and buy the space or data from me, and I support you in that sense, and that's all you pay for. The idea then also is that students can do some research into this, because it's the future. That's where we're headed. And I know that as we walk through that future, it'll be an interesting area for the students to engage very quickly. And students have great ideas because they've not been exposed very much to some of the challenges of life. They're able to think outside the box and challenge status quo. We love that. Another thought idea that I would throw out to any student that's willing to consider is careful deconstruction and reuse. That's an area that we haven't, really invested, time in. For example, there's a building, you tear that building down, and everything is hauled off and to the dump. Why can't we deconstruct those items and reuse them? There is a huge opportunity there. It leads to a better environment for all of us. And of course, facility resource and resource management, there are a lot of building information system modules that are out there that, again, students, I encourage you to invest in those areas. How can we conserve the use of the resources that we have at such facilities? You're able to measure and bring down your spend on maintaining the facility to under 3%. On average, it's from 5 to 15% of any building. Today, you can work with very measurable ideas that can bring that down to 3%. That's a win for the community. It's a win for the investor. It's a win for everyone. Those are the kind of things that we're looking and tracking towards and looking forward to. In talking about the sort of call for action, this is where I want to spend a little bit of time for the time, and we welcome questions, we welcome a lot of interaction as we go. But the idea is to promote and galvanize thought leaders. How can we get leaders together to begin to consider this huge opportunity that we have? How can we work together, the academia, the business community, all coming together because we have a shared future. We must do it together. And those investment practices must succumb to right mindset and right green processes. Those sustainable ideas and ideals that we all hold dear to our hearts. Those are the areas that I believe we have a lot of work to do. Where are those thought leaders? How can we get them together so we can start doing, putting our heads together to build and to define what that future looks like and build towards it? We must prioritize research in responsible innovation. And this is where, in an academic environment like this is key. How can we invest and push and encourage people to research more and do some more research in this area? Because there's a lot to be uncovered. There's a lot yet to be uncovered, and we should put a lot of energy into these areas. We must prioritize and resilient data governance over insurance for risk management. Today, people would say, oh, I have insurance coverage. So if my data is exposed, if my building is not protected and secure, and that data leaks out, guess what? I have insurance, so I don't have to worry about it. That is not the right mindset for tomorrow. The right mindset is to prioritize the resilient data governance. How can we protect that data? You only have it if you have a need to know. If you have no need to know or access that data, you shouldn't and you wouldn't. And we must also mandate environmental, social, and governance best practices. How can we get involved with the right government, with the right regulation to make sure that these mandates are baked into how we operate? How do we make sure that these mandates are baked into our curriculum, even in schools, so that these are taught from early on? And how can we work to mandate this net zero carbon emissions for buildings, for new innovations, for new investments? We must be able to have ways to capture the impact of every investment. And in capturing the impact of that investment, we're able to even tax over when you go above a certain level, you get to pay for it because you're creating a future that's not desirable. And we must prioritize awareness and educate the community so that everybody is aware of the little ways that they can do, the little things that they can do to improve and to engage in this fight to building a future that we all desire. The coalition must be built, and that movement must start now. And as we say, must start now, it begins with you. And every one of us here at some point must have dreamt and does dream to become or of being a hero at some point. You still can be. And we throw this opportunity at you, and this is a great way to be a hero. Thank you for this opportunity. Glad to be here. Back to you, Abhilasha.
That was amazing. Thank you, Sonny. And I see one question from Medina. Should we start with that, Joel?
Yes, go right ahead. Medina is one of our PhD candidates, so she's following in your footsteps here.
That's great. You will do wonderful. And it's a great question. Medina, do you want to elaborate on it, or do you want to talk about the question and then we?
Yeah, participants do not have microphone access, so
Okay.
So go ahead and read the question, and then you can answer it.
Totally. So I'll stop sharing just to make sure. So Medina, you had a really good question. The question is, at what size should an organization or type of business beyond critical infrastructure consider standing up a SOC? And also, what's your perspective on outsourcing a SOC? So I have to say that, again, these are things about my understanding, and I've been into a brand new SOC over the last year. So one thing you will learn is, after decades of doing cybersecurity, you'll learn something new every single day. So after having looked at the SOC from first from outside, so providing, there are some things called the Mssps. They are managed security services provider. So we've seen over the last few years, everything is as a service. So you are doing something, platform as a service. We are looking at even a SOC as a service. So I earlier on worked with a lot of managed security services providers and empowering them with tools, technologies, so that they can serve multiple other organizations. So sometimes it wasn't the size of the organization per se that was requiring standing up a SOC. It was also the severity, like looking at how critical, what is the risk associated with it. Most of the time, it was a combination, at least the ones that I have experienced, is a hybrid model. There are certain things that take care of themselves, and then they also partner with an security operations center, like that outsource model you mentioned, which is as a service, because there's value in having a broad set of cyber threat intel. There is also the ability to keep up to date with the type of technologies that you need to be very agile, because things change very quickly. There was a few years back, everything was about ransomware. Before that, there would be some bots, and things will change. The ability to change with it requires a lot more flexible model, and the cost, frankly, is quite high for, depending on the type of business. And you really need to. That is why some of these cloud models are working extremely well, which allow you to get going with your work versus having to worry about all the tax that you have to pay to get to be able to protect it. So it's a really great question. It's case by case, and there is value in there are at least 4 or 5 different models. Pure SOC in your organization, just the network part is outsourced or a combination of the two. So that's that is something worth investigating and seeing between the compliance and security needs, what model will suit you. Sony, would you like to add?
Yeah, what I'll add there, and you covered it. What I'll add is that what are you trying to protect? So the size of the company or the organization really does not. It's not a one-to-one, match. It's the question. The answer would be, what are you trying to protect, and what is your. So, for example, you take a mom and pop company that is has 10 employees, 20 employees. Again, the type of business that they're in versus an IT business or a bank, for example. In terms of the importance of standing a SOC would kind of relate to what you're trying to do, what are you trying to accomplish, and where are you in that vulnerability space or spectrum. If you're critical and you're in the eyes of the entire world, perhaps yes, it makes sense to quickly stand up something. But like Abhilasha said, it'd be helpful to either consider all of the options that are available today, SOC as a service. And the reason you want to consider outsourcing that is either from a cost perspective, but also a compliance perspective. That again depends on what the regulation that you're trying to make sure that you're in compliance to. The other aspect is making sure that it is a conversation that must be had. This is where a lot of the companies miss out on it. They think security is not my problem today because I don't see it physically, but cybersecurity is not physical. And so that makes it very difficult for most people to recognize it up front. But every environment, every business organization should think about this and consider it and take action. Back to you.
Abhilasha, before you take that next question, who is also coming from one of our PhD candidates in the Cerias program, Sunny, and you're dealing with the customers and things. Much of your presentation was talk about sustainability, and I had an anecdotal conversation with somebody. How much are companies coming to you and saying that sustainability and green technologies and lowering the energy bill and saving saving the world and all that is part of their concern? And then the second part is because the anecdotal story that I'd heard is that they start to fold when they come to, well, it's going to cost us more. Well, let's just go ahead and continue to be an energy hog. What is it on the front lines of dealing with the customers that you're hearing?
You're absolutely correct. The issue there is most people think about it, talk about it, but don't take action, which is why we wanted to amplify our voice here to say everybody, and I'm sure we don't know who is going to listen to this, but to amplify the voice that there's a need to galvanize thought leaders to begin to bake this into our day-to-day business operation. And if we don't, we'll be surprised when we get to that future. And the second aspect of it is people are thinking of ways of getting around it. And I'm sure you've heard of the term greenwashing, where they look at how can I align with somebody who is doing something close to something that relates to sustainability. And once I do that, I can make the claim that yes, I too have done it. But that's where we need to get people begin to drum this up within the next 5 years to get thought leaders together to say, look, how can we bake this into our way of life? It's not just a one-time thing, but it becomes our way of life.
Thank you.
I just love how Sony explained that also, by the way, because it's really not bad to be, I just can't imagine being on the sidelines for something that important, So while we observe it and we talk about it and then get going with our day-to-day, the idea of embracing it and really making the difference, if it's not us, then who? Just taking action is so critical, otherwise it doesn't happen on its own.
And there is an additional question in the Q&A, and it is very specifically for you, Abhilasha.
Yeah, and Sony, feel free to share your kids' experiences too. I'm a little older, but I can't tell you, when I saw Drew, the question is, what is the best part of Purdue Cerias experience? And what might you have done differently? I just stopped at Purdue experience and I was like, gosh, you have no idea how much I'm attached to it. It's been many years, time passes, most older people will say that, and it really does pass very fast, but I relished every second of being at Purdue. Education-wise, the friends turned family. I met my husband there too. My sister was there. Seriously, the friends who, the circle that we made over the years, they're now different leaders in different parts of the industry. We wear different hats, but we're so closely knit. The relation with professors, with our staff, with everyone is beyond a certain role. It's not just about getting one thing done. I lean on them as I would lean on, family, literally. Like if something goes on, I'll just send a message and I was like, hey, I need to talk. So we built some long-standing relationships, and I really, that Purdue experience was very, very positive one for me. It was a safe environment to continue to learn like anything. Like Joel was talking about 4 majors, could stay there forever in front of that fountain writing that thesis. I was like, okay, I'm ready for the next one. But at some point, you want to do something about it. You see things and you want to go and make a difference in the world. And the relationships have helped quite a bit. So learning, making friends, and building those relationships was very natural and was a really good part. The other thing which I really would love for folks to have is, I think the education made me fearless. Like many people challenged over many years, like, can you do this? And I still remember I was half in tears. I think once I went in the number theory class was really tough. So I walked into Professor Wagstaff's office. He was having, and his wife came over, and there was some really good cookies. So that made it better. And we sat down that afternoon from morning to night, and we went through the entire number theory book. And it's like, it's not that hard, and we just broke it down into smaller pieces. It's like, we can do anything. Nothing is tough if you just sit down, and the smartest minds in the world, we just work together and get things done with some respect, with a really nice, positive environment. So every bit of it was good. Things I would have done differently. It's hard to think about it, but I'm sure there were things I could have done differently. I was a child myself, on being able to, I don't know, explore even further. But I have to tell you, the things that I remember at this point are things that I just seriously treasure. And I'm very grateful for that.
Well, as I have told you many times, all of Cerias and Purdue is extremely proud of you. Sunny, next time you're on campus with one of your children, I hope that we have the opportunity to meet in person soon. And with that, we have wrapped up another section of the Cerias Security Seminar live from Purdue University. This recording will be posted. Please share it with your peers. I think there's a lot of takeaway information that is useful, not just only for students, but those who are already working within the industry. And we'll see you all again next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks a lot, you guys. That was wonderful. So,
Thank you.
Sunny, are any of your daughters, was it daughters that you sent here, you say?
Now I have two that graduated, one
graduated.
from Creighton and then the other from the Purdue Polytechnic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So neither
And
one
then I
of
have
them
two
chose
more.
In the one in Polytechnic, was she studying in cyber at
No.
all?
No, both. No, the one in from Purdue Polytechnic did supply chain.
Supply chain. Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's so important. So
Yeah.
I had heard everybody like 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years, 3 years ago, everybody who was graduating out of the supply chain major was offered a job by the same large corporation.
Yeah.
The entire graduating class out of that
Wow.
offered jobs by the same company. So
Company.
we won't talk about it because we're still recording, but it's not hard to figure out who's
are we
hiring
recording? I wanted to
lots
ask.
of logistics people. So,
And
I
I
want
don't
to
mean to
say hi.
interrupt, but this is Sean. I just wanted to say, because I've been emailing with you back and forth so much, Abhilasha, thank you to you and Sunny very much for giving this talk. It was awesome.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
hope it helps the students because it really makes, I mean, for me, I remember getting those talks and triggering, hey, we could do that. I hope it helps. And it's great to see Adam too, like when you were
Yes, it
on.
was nice. It was nice seeing you as well.
Yeah, like can't believe I used to always keep bugging Adam in his office. So I won't say what I did, but
Yeah.
Well, now you both have to come visit.
yes,
Please,
please.
that
Yes.
would be
Love to
great.
have you in
That'd be
person.
great.
And
That'd
we
be
have
awesome.
announced the dates for the Cerias Symposium, in which, by the way, will be also the celebration of our 25th anniversary of Cerias. So that'll
Oh,
be 29/30. Is that right, Sean?
28th and 29th. The 30th is
March
the
28, 29.
Uh-huh.
So
of March or
of March.
Yep, of next
Yeah.
March.
Sean, have you gotten the fireworks ready, or are we doing something like that?
Yes, I've gotten the jugglers and the fire eaters and the knife swallowers and everything as well. It's
Nice.
gonna be a
Can you
huge
just take
celebration.
care of the COVID variants? I would love to come. I just don't have the courage to travel as much.
Yep. and
Well,
I'm-
that's a tall
John's got
order,
the
but we'll see what
fireworks.
we can do.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Adam. You could do.
Very good. Well, again, thanks very much. Appreciate you
thank
guys,
you.
and look forward to any near future interactions as well. And Sunny, are you in California as well?
No, I mean Arlington, Virginia.
Arlington. Okay. Well, I get to Arlington probably more often than I do California. So
Okay.
if I get that way and have time, we'll see if we can get together and grab lunch. So
Okay, I'm always in Carmel, Indiana as well. So
Oh.
that's my second home. So
okay. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, come to campus. I'll still
Yeah.
buy lunch. Come to campus.
okay, okay, I will.
Yeah.
Sunny is such an amazing person to work with. I'll be really happy if you guys get a chance to meet. I was very grateful to be able to partner here because you know how letting all of us work day and night, but
Yes.
the ability to and the way you also inspired the students, I'm really thankful for that.
So last comment, Abby, is I think who at one time was your boss's boss at your previous employer was on campus a couple of weeks ago, and still just raved on what a unbelievable person you are, but an unbelievable researcher. So, sometimes when you leave a company, even if you did good, they're like, oh, they were still
That's
raving
very
on just what an amazing person you are and the impact that you had on that corporation. So congrats.
And we're keeping her up because
Yes.
she's doing a phenomenal job at Microsoft. She's making changes And I am so proud of everything that she continues to do. Until I found out that it was, the Purdue connection. Like, yeah, now I know.
Right. And Sean helped
Just-
us. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no,
Well, very good with that.
Fantastic.
Great to see you guys. And thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.